Hello everyone, my name is Michael and I am the Crafty Crocheter, and today I am going to go over the top 10 habits and or sins that just about every crocheter, including myself, fall victim to. Feel free to follow along and see how many of these transgressions you have done or have done in the past. There is no scoring for this test, as it is just a fun realization exercise of your conscious or unconscious crocheting habits. Alright everyone, here we go. Crocheter sin number 1, the Smaug effect, or aka yarn hoarding. I call this the Smaug effect because this is where the typical crocheter hoards yarn, just like how Smaug was buried in his piles of gold. Even if there is no project for the plan to be used for this yarn, most of the time, we all fall in love with the colors, textures, designs, patterns, and if there's any kind of shiny speckles in the yarn fibers. And I am usually guilty of that when it comes to yarn hoarding. Luckily, it hasn't gotten to the climbing over piles of yarn scenario for me yet. Crocheter sin number 2, working on too many projects. This is where crocheters start on one project and then either get mesmerized or distracted by another project that they see elsewhere and start working on that project instead of working on the current one. And I am guilty of this one as well. It usually circles back to yarn hoarding, at least for me it does. Crocheter sin number 3, crocheting while watching TV and movies. I do this quite often. This is where the crocheter works on a project while watching TV or movies, but not really being engaged in the program at all, either through their phone, their computer, or their TV set. For some, it's more for background noise when working on a project. I usually solve this by either just turning down the volume, muting, or just turning off the TV altogether, and work on my project from there. Crocheter sin number 4, not following the pattern to the letter. We've all done this, including myself. We get a pattern for our project, read over it top to bottom, left to right, forwards and backwards, start working on it, and then somewhere in the project we decide to take creative liberties and start adding extra stitches or rows or rounds without real regard for the pattern at all. It's usually a crapshoot, and sometimes the risk reaps rewards, or sometimes it can prove to be disastrous. Crocheter sin number 5, not buying enough yarn for a project. We've all done this at one time or another. You get what you think is enough yarn for a project, you start working on a project, and then halfway or just about at the end of the project, you realize that you don't have enough yarn. So then you go out and try to find the exact same yarn if it's available, or if it's not available, then you try to find the closest substitute, which some of the time it doesn't prove fruitful as the project doesn't turn out the way you want it to. So it's like in cooking, you can always add but you cannot take away. So it's usually advantageous to buy more yarn than you need, so that way it ensures that you have enough yarn for the project. You could always use the extra yarn for other projects. Crocheter sin number 6, getting emotionally attached to a project. Again, I can relate to this one. We all finish a project or two, and then we become emotionally attached to it, and we don't want to relinquish the item or items. Especially when many projects are involved. I myself have completed so many projects that I am running out of space for them all. It kind of stems from the belief that part of our soul is embedded in the item itself when we're working on it. And again, we don't want to give up our souls easily. I guess at some point the overwhelming amount can serve as an incentive to donate those items to someone who can actually benefit from them. I am looking for an organization or charity to donate my items to, so if you know of any organizations or can point me to the best point of contact, please let me know. Crocheting sin number 7, FOMO. We all have FOMO, or fear of missing out. This is especially true when it comes to sales in general, but for us crocheters, those would be yarn sales. For some of us, we can never get or have enough yarn, so we tend to stalk the interwebs for those blue tag specials on yarn at craft stores and just go nuts. There is a Japanese term for this. It's called quirks, which means to bankrupt oneself. For fiber crafters such as ourselves, this usually comes in the form of yarn. And besides, who doesn't like a good bargain? Crocheting sin number 8, not correcting mistakes right away. We've all done this at one time or another. We're working on a project, and then, and about several rows of rounds later on, you realize that a mistake was incurred, and then, rather than going back and correcting it, we just keep going without correcting the mistake, and this can sometimes prove to be disastrous. When in doubt, rip it out. Crocheting sin number 9, crochet hook hoarding. Lots of us like having crochet hooks of different types and styles and sizes for different projects that you want to do. But alas, we also tend to collect too many of them, but really use a few of them all together. And I can attest to this because I have crochet hooks of, usually have a bunch of crochet hooks of the same size, but I only use 1 or 2 of them for all my projects because I am comfortable using them. And this can also coincide with yarn hoarding if you think about it. So ask yourself, is it a want versus a need? Then crocheting sin number 10, planning for a project but never actually completing it. Who has done this? You see an elaborate crochet project and then you say to yourself, I am going to complete it right away. But then life gets in the way, or we get distracted by shiny objects. Oh, like shiny object! And then the project gets put on the back burner, or it doesn't get addressed again or thought of again for several months or even years. Fortunately, I have not fallen into that trap as of yet, and I plan on staying out of that pit. There you have it, folks. The top 10 crocheting sins committed by crocheters everywhere. Again, I'm not saying that all crocheters commit these sins, but I felt that these should be addressed so that to really present us with a different perspective when it comes to crocheting altogether. Hopefully y'all have enjoyed this video, and as a reminder, this is a safe space for all, so negative and derogatory comments of any kind will not be tolerated, as we have too much negativity going on in this current existence. On that note, don't forget to like and subscribe, take care of yourself and each other.